purpose of this panel is to make available to administrators and guidance counselors resources that they can use. And we've made a lot of the conference, the summit, about trying to build pathways, trying to figure out how we can help school districts or assist them in setting up some case frameworks, right? And this group, they're going to introduce themselves. If you got your program, you'll be able to tell that this is a pretty experienced and knowledgeable group from state agencies and really other agencies that support workforce development and pathway creation. So this is the group to ask questions to in a little while. All right. First, I'm going to have them introduce themselves, go through, and it doesn't matter which end we start at, Eric, if you don't mind starting. And then I have a series of questions for them. I'm going to split you up into some groups, and then we'll come back together and maybe address any of the concerns or questions you have. So, Erica?
Sure. Good afternoon, Dr. Erica Thieman. I am at the Illinois State Board of Education. I am in charge of K-12 standards and instruction. So what falls under my umbrella is dual credit, as we do oversee advanced academic programs as well. Roger has asked us to share something about us that a lot of people may not know. So I will share. I've got a lot of bruises on my body today. I'm a nationally ranked strength athlete and had my debut/retirement in a strongman competition on Saturday. I do the Scottish Highland Games in powerlifting. So that's what I do when I'm not doing ISB things. Heather?
Good deal. Afternoon, everyone. Heather Lueken. I'm a principal consultant in the CTE department at ISB. I oversee school counselors as well as the arts and communication pathway. And that was because I was a band director, so that's why I'm in that. And let's see, something about me. Okay, I have a cottage bakery, so when I'm not ISBing, then I have cookies and cakes and catering to weddings and so forth.
So Roger, the literacy plan cookies,
Yep.
That was
she
me.
made those.
Yeah.
Yeah, I can vouch for the deliciousness of. I've had CTE cookies, actually, to be honest with you. Yes. Yeah, so if there's other ideas.
Yeah.
Hi, everybody. My name's Jason Klein. My title is Senior Director of Learning Partnerships. I work at Northern Illinois University and help lead the Illinois P20 network, which is about 400 school districts, community colleges, and universities across the state. And career and college readiness is one of our 4 areas of focus, and we run a dual credit think tank that seeks to bring people together to address the issues that we have in dual credit, because it is a complicated arena. My background, I worked for 25 years in school districts as a teacher, principal, and district administrator prior to these last 5 years at NIU. One thing about me that a lot of people don't know is the one other time I was in Olney. So I'm proud. I love traveling. Like literally, I love traveling the state of Illinois. Meg and I were just talking about this. It is the favorite part of my job. But I raced my bike in Olney probably 30-ish years ago, 31 years ago. And so, yeah.
Hi, everybody. I'm Meg Bates. I'm from University of Illinois. I'm the director of a statewide education research center called iWork, which stands for Illinois Workforce and Education Research Collaborative. We do research on whatever are the most important issues in Illinois education, and dual credit, of course, is a very important issue, so we've done research on that. One thing about me, I'm from Quincy, Illinois, on the other side of the state, and my very first job, part-time, was a DJ at a radio station in Quincy.
Love it. Love it.
I'm so jealous.
I love it.
That's awesome.
great.
I didn't know that.
So just a follow-up question. What was the song of the day? What you spin the most?
Oh my gosh, that's a good question. It was something by Madonna. It was late 90s, but I don't remember. It was
Vogue?
like, it was past Vogue. It was like
Past
her
Vogue.
new kind of re-envisioning.
Oh, probably music then.
It was from music, yeah.
That
That's a
song.
great job.
Music.
Yeah.
That's a great.
Yeah.
Getting to pick what
That's
other
my
people listen
retirement
to
job.
all
I
that
love
stuff.
that.
That's awesome.
So
that is-
I've got a few questions that I'm going to ask to get their perspective, both from statewide perspective, and also they, as part of their jobs, deal with agencies. And agencies have a role in what finally makes it down to the school districts, right? And so they have a perspective that I think is unique. And the first question I'm going to ask to react to is what they see as the greatest challenges that are facing Illinois regarding the implementation of dual credit, early college, PACE, pathways, that type of thing. So Meg, we'll start with you this time.
Yeah, so I'm going to kind of call back to something Josh was talking about earlier. Of it's always great when your kids that would have done well anyway are successful, and you're happy to support that success. But it's really about reaching the students who might otherwise not have done well. So what we saw in our research on dual credit in the state is that dual credit enrollment is going up at a great rate, and that's really something to be proud of. And enrollment of all student populations is going up. That's also something to be proud of. But we are seeing some widening disparities as that enrollment increases. And so I think a challenge that we all face together in thinking this through is as we, offer and get more kids in dual credit, how can we make sure that, our children with disabilities are participating in dual credit, that our students from low-income families are participating in dual credit? Just thinking about that equity and inclusion piece as we increase dual credit.
I think the biggest challenge is using these policy changes to really re-envision what school looks like for students. I think otherwise we're continuing to kind of work on the margins. I think some of that is borne out by the data that Meg just talked about, like that we are going to have gaps continue to appear if we're only working on the margins of a system that continues to do this. And I think, it's funny, people around the state think, oh, he loves the endorsements, because I've gotten to do so much work with Heather the last few years on the implementation of the endorsements. And what I really love is kids getting to be really active learners in really authentic settings. And I know that is the key to unlocking learning for all students. And I think by and large, and this was probably true of most of us, we didn't experience that in school. And most of us that work in schools are the kids that Josh was talking about when we were younger. We did well. So we are, in fact, literally the worst people to reinvent schools. And yet that's exactly what we need to do. Everything from how we use time to what learning looks like, and then to measuring stuff, which does come back into play with getting where we need to go with dual credit. Because like rigor, quality, these are really important words. Roger's talked about them, Josh has talked about them. I agree. How do we measure those words, though, and come to consensus around what that means? And I think if we don't do some big reimagining, we're never going to be able to actually hit that mark. The last thing I'll say on this, I believe that we are at a time and in a place in Illinois, statewide, where we have opportunities to do this for all kids. I would say this in any region in Illinois right now that are maybe never seen before in this country, and we need to double down and take advantage of it, despite all of us as educators being exhausted still from the pandemic and everything else. Like, this is a moment, and we can actually do this across the state.
That's good. That's a tough one to follow up on. I will speak from school counselor perspective, and the phone calls that I get regarding this, especially with the implementation of PACE framework, or the pathway endorsements, or even just pathways themselves not leading to an endorsement itself. And the biggest obstacle that I hear coming from the school districts is offering it to all students and showing the relevance of that, moving beyond just what they typically see as those gen eds, and getting exposure to all areas. So within the pathway endorsements, you've got dual credit that oftentimes is in a welding class or in the nursing, something like that, and what that could lead to, even if the student decides not to continue on with post-secondary college, but they're actually just looking at a focus on post-secondary career. There's been a big push within a lot of the districts, especially rural areas, where they're asking for, can we stop calling it college and career readiness and just call it career readiness? And I think that mindset, when you talk about that shift and reinventing, if we could move that direction, Jason and I have been huge advocates for that and sometimes intentionally flip it when we talk about it. But when you talk about the reporting aspect of it, so the pathway endorsements, and you have to report on what dual credit you have or early college credit. When you talk about the college and career readiness indicators, again, college and career readiness indicators, you put that college first. Let's just call it career readiness. We know that our students have different pathways to get where they need to go, and our job, our charge, I feel, is to prepare them for whatever that post-secondary career is.
So much. So from my perspective, I really appreciate Jason's comments about reimagining. When we look at our K-12 education systems, and I think even outside of K-12, they haven't changed a whole lot since the 1900s when the Compulsory Education Act went into place. So we were preparing people for jobs in factories, and so we put them in grade levels. So regardless of your background knowledge, your capabilities, where you need to be starting at, we are putting them all together because they're the same age. And we fundamentally know developmentally, even males and females are very different in their development of language skills, mathematics skills. So we really need a re-envisioning, and I was really disappointed when the pandemic happened that we've really focused on reverting back to where we were before rather than really capitalizing on a very unique once-in-a-lifetime, hopefully once-in-a-lifetime opportunity to really move education systems forward. With that, kind of piggybacking off of Heather, longitudinal data is absolutely essential. So we focus on seniors transitioning to college, and that has been a driver for a number of years. We know that is hurting a lot of trades and career fields, but we don't have the ability right now to connect our K-12 data and what students are doing in schools and how that ultimately leads to career outcomes across the board. We can do that in smaller populations, but we cannot do that across the board. So I think it's really hard to decide if a program in K-12 is actually working in the long run because we can't track it to career outcomes and long-term life happiness and success of individuals. The one last thing I'm going to add is universal internet access. I am the product of a farm family. I went to a small rural school. I had 38 in my graduating class. Thankfully, way back in the day, in the 90s, I had access to ITV coursework, so I was able to take physics. I would not have been able to take that had we not had that opportunity. And so for our rural students especially, we need better internet access. When I look at the data maps, the visualizations of broadband access, AP access, dual credit access, you name it, if I layer them, there are deserts of broadband access that pull through every single layer that I look at. So I know correlation is not causation. At the same time, I can't help but think that those things must be related, because if a student doesn't have internet access at home, and I mean reliable, high-speed internet, I used to live in the country, I used to have satellite internet, and it is far from reliable, especially during planting and harvest season. And it is problematic for them to be able to do their dual credit coursework when they go home, for them to be able to do their AP coursework, IB, whatever they may be participating in. So I'll stop talking with that.
Okay, so let's drill down just a little bit into the reimagining, re-envisioning comment that was made, because the second part, I asked you the greatest challenges. I'm going to talk about what you're seeing out there that is meeting the challenge, that would qualify toward this re-envisioning or reimagining education in ways that are creative and have resulted in opportunities for students who may not otherwise have those opportunities, or what they're doing that's putting them in a successful position to provide career pathways. And let's start, Jason will start with you.
Yeah, well, I think we actually heard the biggest key of this, and it sounds easy. We say it to 5-year-olds all the time, but it's really, really hard. And that's the cooperation between the school districts and the community colleges. So we are, our Illinois P20 Network team, we are increasingly being brought in by community colleges. We have multiple community colleges we're working with right now to navigate, create customized like engagement processes with their school districts. And we're being brought in because we're Switzerland. The Illinois P20 network means literally as, you know, we're from early childhood through ongoing adult education, so we're not on a side here. And so I think that is the big challenge, and it's going to require two things. One, it requires everybody to compromise. We're on the flip side, we are at a moment in time in this country where we're not at our best in terms of compromising. You might have noticed that. But so that's an absolute. The other thing is, it is dual credit, which means both the school district and the post-secondary institution, the community college, are equally important. And they have got to come together and talk through those things and make those compromises. And so, our goal is to put that line of custom consulting work out of business for ourselves so that people are just doing that. And we see examples of that. And I think today is an incredible step in the right direction here in a really unique area of the state with, right, 4 community colleges as part of a district, a system, and your distances, we've got our rural challenges, internet access. I rode my bike past a house last night that said they're getting 400 megabits per second, and I wanted to like I didn't take a picture because I was worried about getting back before dark, but of like, who is that provider and how true is that claim? This was out in Claremont, and so it was like, okay, cool, I hope that's real. So there's a lot of stuff we've talked about, but compromise, I think, is the key here.
Sure, let's see. So where I've seen things going well and the success stems from exactly what Jason just said, the communication. That's been integral for all of those districts that have struggled with getting dual credit or having those conversations, getting that starting point to kind of dive in and have the conversations. I know that also beyond just the district to the community college, it's district to district as well. Having those conversations, I've seen quite a bit where students are coming into a different district to obtain that dual credit if that's what needs to happen. So that's been some in those areas that I've seen with great success on that. I'm sure I'll think of more, but that's what I got right now.
So 2 things for me. One is virtual coursework. So I think community colleges stepping into that virtual dual credit space is going to be very advantageous, and I think some are stepping into that. Mm-hmm. It is much more feasible in many cases because you don't have people having to actually transport, and we were talking about how far institutions can be from each other and how big those district boundaries can be in rural areas. But there are some that are making that work, and there's even community colleges that are making dual credit free of charge to students because they are able to make the finances work and also understand that in the long term, there are gains to be had from getting those students into your system and gaining free access to them. I would also add a shift in relationship between the community colleges and high schools. I hear a lot at the state board from outreach from administrators, and there are instances where we've seen a really beautiful shift in the relationship where the two institutions are looking at each other as partners to helping students achieve their goals and dreams. And then there's other instances where there seems to be a turf battle over who is appropriate to teach the coursework. And those get really frustrating for everybody involved. And I think everybody has a right to feel that way at the same time. I think we need to step back and look at what is best for our students and what does it really take to be able to teach that content. We are no longer in a world where you have to have all the information and facts in your head. We don't operate that anymore. So it is possible to gain proficiency and skill in areas without going to college, without taking coursework. CTE already knows that, but we're kind of late to the game in other areas.
So I'll just build on some of these things. I kind of have 2 points. So one is, as part of our research into dual credit, we made a map of districts and what percentage of their kids are in dual credit. And then we also overlaid all of the community college districts to see what was going on with these districts that had a high percentage of students in dual credit. And so what I really want to emphasize for this audience is that Southern Illinois is leading the way. Like, the Eastern community colleges are leading the way. They're one of the top performers on dual credit and working with districts. So I actually would say, can this group, can others teach the rest of us in the state how to do this well? Because you have overcome a lot of those institutional and cooperative barriers already. So that's kind of one point I'd make, is that this really, we're really on the vanguard down here in dual credit offering. The second is not to sort of pit advanced placement and dual credit against each other. There's sort of a weird thing in the data of districts that offer more AP offer less dual credit and vice versa. But there are districts that are doing both really well, and they can serve really complementary purposes. So I would encourage thinking more about offering both and how they can work together. I guess those would be my 2 points.
Can I just hit on one last thing? With what I talked about with the compromise, and as I'm listening to this, I want to say, when I think about those community colleges and regions, where it's going really, where, like, from my lens, it's going really well. Some of that's based on numbers. Some of that's based on the work. I'm lucky enough to get a C from region to region to region. It doesn't always feel like it's going well within the region. So, like the woman who lives with me would say at home, he's annoying, he's frustrating, this, and that, right? But, it doesn't mean it's not going well, which is what I would probably say back. But that's an aside. Anyways, the point is, in reality, this is complicated, and so I don't want to create a Shangri-La, because I think what Meg has pointed out is absolutely true. And when I think about particularly the other rural community colleges, or not Chicagoland, not Metro East community colleges that are doing it really well, again, there's certainly school districts in those regions who would say, I'm so frustrated about this, or that. And I kind of want to look at them and say, yeah, you guys know you got it great here, right? So I just want to present that counterpoint, that's part of implementing well, is we're working through those issues. Excuse me, sorry.
Yeah, so on the AP dual credit kind of trade-off, there does seem to be a bit of a trade-off. And when I've been speaking to administrators, if a community college is going to present barrier after barrier and make it difficult to get dual credit in place and drag it out for months, it is much easier logistically for the school just to go AP. Yep. Because all they have to do is go online, sign up for the exams, get the curriculum. College board makes AP easy to get going. And so if community colleges don't proactively work with their districts and really work on that relationship, and schools are going to go AP because parents are going to demand that their students have access to advanced coursework. And my concern and fear is that once they go that direction, I think it's going to be very difficult to bring them back. And I am always going to champion Illinois institutions as an Illinois resident and employee of the Illinois State Board of Education. College Board is not an Illinois institution. That being said, I manage the College Board contract and I'm in charge of AP. I see a place for both for schools, but I have concerns that if we don't start to really work on those relationships and the barriers, we're going to hit a point of no return.
The other thing that all of us know, and Heather's lived this most as a counselor in a small high school. I mean, again, the school districts in which I've been responsible for scheduling for were very large school districts, but I know scheduling. Like, we understand in smaller schools and smaller districts, you have difficult choices to make about what you can and can't offer. And, I have an idea in my head that I haven't tested in the last 5 years of how many kids is like the flipping point to make dual credit kind of easier to do. And I have a number in here, and it's partially based on how many staff there are, right? And then how many teachers are likely. I mean, just today, it's so awesome. We've got all these teachers here in this region. There's a lot of hard work behind that are credentialed to be able to teach these dual credit courses. But, we know that is all part of the calculation that school districts need to undertake with, this is what we can actually offer.
Which goes back to virtual course offerings.
Sure,
too.
absolutely.
Because
Yep.
I was one of 2 students from my school who took that ITV physics course. That was why they couldn't offer it in person, because there just wasn't enough demand for it. And I know in our CTE areas, in our rural schools, there are students that don't have access to pathways and opportunities just because there isn't a critical mass within the district. And so and I think a lot of schools are just really not adopting the virtual coursework. And I know there are collective bargaining unit issues with that as well. But when we think about student opportunities, the way in which virtual course offerings open up the course catalog for high school students especially, there's no reason that a student in Olney can't take advantage of dental hygienist programs, can't take advantage of the wide range of CTE programs that are available in our virtual course catalog. But if the district doesn't offer it, they don't have those.
We talked a lot about, I think it goes along with the collaborations, probably going to be a very popular topic, but my biggest concern as a principal, I have teachers who are teaching these dual credit classes. They are not getting paid to teach these dual credit classes. I have no incentive to ask these teachers to go back and get the credentials to teach these classes. So my students are being charged by IECC. My school district is not receiving any of the funds. But then when I have brought this up previously, it's like, well, their school's giving incentives to these teachers. Well, my school district can't afford to give incentives to the teachers when I'm paying an aide to sit in my synchronous classroom. These kids, if it's taught on campus, it's $25. But if it's elsewhere, it's like 50% or synchronous.
Yeah, 30%.
You're talking a huge distance for my kids to drive. So I, as a principal, I want all of my kids to have an opportunity to take a $25 college class on my campus, but I can't afford to pay my teachers to go back to school. I can't afford to pay my teachers to teach these classes. So there's that, I don't know the answer to it, but I know that in my small district, I've also got my front office is doing billing for IECC. It's inundated her with a lot of work, mailing all those things out, collecting that money. We of course have to pay IECC right off the bat, but then we are getting caught up on the back end of that where our kids may not pay the bill. So now we've got a bunch of bills out there. So we're getting hit on that aspect. My school counselor is doing a lot of the enrolling, scheduling, that kind of stuff and not getting paid to do any of that. So it takes away from her being able to
Yep.
deal with my other kids. There's only one of her, unfortunately, I need 15 of her in my school. But so it's just, I feel like there's a lot of work happening in my district, but we're not. Now listen, I want to be very clear. We couldn't do without IECC because I have to have those opportunities for my kids. And I'm so grateful that they can take welding and that they can take, I couldn't do it without them. So I know I need them and I'll continue to do it. I just wish that we could, make that a better opportunity.
One of the things we're going to do, and Meg and I were talking about this earlier. I think I said something to Roger this morning. Josh knows this. Through our dual credit think tank, we are going to be launching a finance subcommittee. We had a August 1st webinar with the legislators about the legislation that did not pass in the spring. And we're currently closing up a survey, which I'm actually going to send the link to you before I leave. It was supposed to be closed yesterday, but I'm leaving it open for a couple days. So if we can get it out to the region to make sure that school districts and IECC can take part in that survey. That's about the legislation that was already out there. But what was telegraphed to us in that August 1st webinar was there probably is a willingness in the vein of other career and college readiness legislation that has been passed, bipartisan in Illinois, to do something about this as dual credit has gotten more widespread. There are more and more legislators that have an understanding. They're hearing about this from their superintendents. We've got people who heard about this from IEA or IFT this past year. And so what we're going to be doing with that subcommittee is picking a few regions, and both the community college and a couple of representative school districts in that region to look at the real costs of dual credit in those regions, and both revenues and expenditures, because there are revenues in places. And we've got people who've already done this work up at Elgin Community College, maybe at Vienna High School, for example. Maybe I've seen that spreadsheet. But we need to make sure we've got this in a consistent format, and then we can come back and say, here's what the money is needed for, and here's how it could help. Now, in the shorter term, and I don't know that this is going to happen, but keep yelling at people, hey, full funding of evidence-based funding. Those are difficult choices in the General Assembly. Like, I'll acknowledge that. We want to spend money on everything, and just like any of us, we can't. So the last thing I'll say is we did put out a white paper with research from districts about how to incentivize teachers. Most of those things cost money, not all of them. Sometimes it's a free period to compensate for that extra work they're doing. But that's got to be really where, with the collective bargaining agreement, it's kind of, hey, let's talk about this. We want to make this happen more easily here. And so that's out there. That's on our website. There's some cool ideas in there. But that's only if we want to take that to the collective bargaining unit and include that as part of negotiations.
Yeah, that's a good point. You can't bargain with just the teacher who teaches dual credit.
Right.
You have to bargain with the entire unit. I would appreciate that white paper being sent too, so that Megan.
I can do that.
Because, it depends. There are some school districts that have paid for the master's degree of the instructor, as long as they then, in return, will agree to teach for a period of years in dual credit. That's the kind of, there are probably some other really good ideas there. Funding, everything has to, and kind of goes back to funding. Now, I will say that at IECC, the tuition and the fees that we receive are now part of funding the infrastructure for us to provide dual credit. That money is used for making sure you have a director, and then we pay for some other things that you might see that we can redistribute the money for. It's a break-even proposition. It's not an attempt for us to make money by charging a lot of tuition. For us to be able to break even. And we haven't really. And probably won't, but that's okay, because it's part of that partnership. You're putting something in it, and we're putting something in it, and it does work out. But I think generally funding, more funding to support it and incentivize it. And we were just talking about some ideas. during
grants.
the break. Erica and I like the idea of figuring out a way for that instructional aid in the classroom, for there to be a pool of money to support districts that have, for that instructional aid. Anything will help.
Yeah, right.
Anything will help. Okay. That's-
Roger, real quick, you'll kick me out here in a second, but just real quick, the master's degree piece is like a vital question for K-12s, I think, right? And it's not just a master's degree, but it's a master's degree with 18 hours of content. You can have a master's degree in underwater basket weaving, but who cares? You gotta have 18 graduate hours in English to teach English.
Means you went to Indiana
So,
University to play
here's what
basketball.
I think our experience has been in Atlanta, right? And I didn't do a great job of reviewing the documents that I handed out, so forgive me, but one of those documents is our high school master's schedule. So it's one of the long ones. If you unfold it, that's our high school master's schedule. Anything highlighted on there in blue that's dual credit courses. So when I say we offer over 125 college credit hours on our high school master's schedule, those college credit hours are taught by our employees, the K-12 employees. So, right, I've got multiple K-12 employees that are college level instructors, right? That sounds like insanity. So you say, how did you get there? The first time we looked at the Board of Education 15 plus years ago and said, hey, I got a great idea. Let's hire a person with a master's degree in chemistry and 13 years of experience. The Board of Education in conservative Johnson County looks at me and says, we don't hire people with experience or master's degree, and we don't want them to get their master's degree once we hire them, because guess what that does? It costs more money. We hire BS zeros. I said, okay, let's do this anyway. And so they gave in, and 2 years later, right, kind of as they see the outcome of that. 2 years later, I had two of my most conservative board members financially looking at me and saying, do you know what dual credit just saved my son, who is now in law school at Southern University of Carbondale, saved my family $80,000. By golly, we've got an opening for an English faculty member. Stafford, you better find a master's degree English faculty member. We don't care how many years of experience they have. So we are now in a situation where the community will go burn my house down if we don't find somebody with a master's degree that can teach the college level, whatever content we're hiring. So it just became a cultural thing for us, right? So we hire people with master's degrees. Now, that doesn't happen overnight. And so I think it's a value proposition that you got to do some math for your community to say, what does this look like? And that becomes collective bargaining and things like that. On the revenue side, just real quick, colleges generate base operating and equalization funds. So small little bitty Vienna, over the last 4 fiscal years, has generated $1.3 million in revenue to our 3 community colleges in base operating and equalization. So those dollars don't come to Atlanta High School. They go to our community colleges because that's where the credit gets transcribed. So I have 2 community colleges, right, that charge us nothing. We don't pay them anything for dual credit because, right, it's our teachers and our classrooms. We buy the books, right? We pay the lion's share of that cost. They transcribe the credit. They generate revenue through base operating equalization. And the 3rd community college actually then pays us for dual credit hours that we generate. So they will write a check back to the K-12 district and basically say, hey, this goes to the teacher. If the teacher had 10 kids in his or her class, I don't know how, I've got the formula on how they do the math, but they'll get, $500 in supply money that we can use for supplies. It's a really great PR tool with our teachers in that particular community college because they're thrilled to get a little money back and that type of thing. So, sorry to.
So there are ways, there are ideas. I mean, an incentive for our instructors, type A instructors, is they can, their family members get free tuition at our schools. I mean, that's a benefit. That's a nice thing. If they have a student, and if they don't, that's really not a benefit. There are ways, and there's bargains, and there's ways to make that. But I still believe that, just generally speaking, we need more funding in the pool to begin with from Springfield investing in K-12 and community college. And a lot of those funding issues involved. I want to get to a couple of the other real quick. Scheduling is something that I heard in 2 or 3 places, and we're well aware. I want you to realize that The traditional college Monday, Wednesday, Friday schedule, and Tuesday, Thursday schedule, we know is difficult for your high school schedules. And we want to be creative in ways to address that, but that takes additional staff, and especially additional staff that are willing to teach those courses at the times. And I mentioned this in the synchronous demonstration, when you have 16 high schools, we have exactly 16 different schedules. No one is on the same high school schedule.
That's right.
Some have block schedules, but guess what? Even the block schedules aren't on the same blocks. So that's gonna take our directors some time to research what our schools need and what we can offer to do Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. But I heard that in a couple of places, and I think Megan and Aaron will tell you that's something we've talked a lot about.
Yeah, and, but I will say it as a plug, it is, for Aaron and I, it's like working a jigsaw puzzle. I mean, when we saw those 16 schedules, it was like, well, we thought there'd be commonality, but there's not a single commonality in any of this. So I guess what I would encourage you to think, and I know we always plan a year in advance, I know you guys do too with your schedule. If you look at your master schedule and you see maybe ways that you could improve your schedule in providing some blocks of time that could be an opportunity for, whether it be synchronous or sending your kids to one of our campuses. I'm gonna pick on County to this. A big brief example is at 8 o'clock time, when you come to OCC, if you were to come here at 8 o'clock on a given day of the week, you're gonna see a lot of Richland County kids. And so Richland County says, okay, go to OCC, take a class, don't come here. I mean, you could, plan out a complimentary schedule, and that works for them. Not to say that works for everybody, but if you strategically look at your schedule and see maybe there could be some adjustments that could provide your students some opportunities to maybe come to a campus, or if you see, hey, we'd like to have this as synchronous, and here's our maybe our generally preferred time, that helps us in our planning as well.
Yeah, and we have now 2 people, 8 schools each. 3 years ago, we had 0 people as directors to go to the schools and work on this.
Yeah.
So to have the infrastructure there, I think is going to be important to helping solve these individual problems, because they're unique. What is in Clay City, or Grayville, or Palestine, or Hudsonville, it's different. What the needs are different just among the staff deficiencies you have, let alone the schedule. But I do believe that a better relationship and partnership when our folks come around 2, 3, 4, 5 times a year to sit down and plan those things is going to be a big help to try and figure out how we can together do that. Now, there was one question about CTE that I want to, as I went around, and you want to give me a capsule of what you were talking to me about, Kelly?
We had just kind of mentioned like the synchronous classroom. You mentioned the digital hygienist program. So our question would be like, if we would go to a synchronous classroom, then how does something like that work? Or have you seen that implemented in other schools?
Have you on the CTE side?
Medical terminology
Yeah.
would be a perfect
There,
one.
there are pieces of the coursework, and if you Google ISB virtual course catalog, you can filter for CTE coursework, and you'll see there's a number of CTE courses in the course catalog. And we're getting ready to add another provider, Edmentum, right now. So there will be a number of additional courses added, but there are, in each of the pathways for CTE, there are different courses that lend themselves to that type of setting.
Absolutely.
We know not all of them. Like you
Right,
can't.
because you got to
be
get your
working on it.
fingers in someone's mouth ultimately.
At some point, you have
But the intro level courses
Yes.
usually.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Maybe
Yeah.
even those
Well,
second
all
level
right,
courses
anybody else
sometimes.
real quick? I know it's 1:30, and I know we don't want to hold you too long. Is it supposed to go to 1:30?
Yeah.
Yes.
1:45?
And the ice cream's not till after that, Roger. So just to make
He's
sure
getting
we're.
ahead
All
of.
right, so we've got a
He's
little bit.
focused on the ice cream.
No, I'm good. I'm good.
Any other, anything from this table? Challenges?
How'd I know?
Just gotta wait until 2 o'clock.
Thing like,
Yes,
the compensation, teachers don't wanna get, like, they don't wanna pay to get a master's degree, all of the same. And the schools that are like, it feels a little bit like the schools are hemorrhaging the money to pay, like, for the students to go, the incentives for the teachers. And this is, like, today was kind of the first we had heard about maybe getting resources, like the books and stuff for, so that we were doing all of that, and the amount of time our guidance office, that was, that's,
Paperwork.
yeah, it's a
And
lot.
I think there's
It is.
work being done on entry as well that may have to do with our technology system to make it easier for the student to actually do the entry. We got kind of a wonky system.
In terms of like admissions?
Sometimes.
Yeah, I
Based on
think
our
that's what he,
guidance.
I think that's what he's talking
And
about.
that's being worked on. Curtis Action is one of the guys that's working on trying to update and improve our technology. It is getting there. And it's getting there. It's getting there. So that is not, you know, our
That's a known
student with
issue,
it,
yeah,
so it's like-
I know Aaron and I have dreams of lots of ways, as much as it seems like a lot of work for you. If you would have seen Aaron and I in August, we were stressing, I'm not gonna lie, it's a lot, but we'll get there. I don't know if I can give you a timeline, but, we have both things.
Yeah, that 16 paperworks, one at a time that you do, there are two of them, systems from 8 of each. And it doesn't need to be
Not
that
to
way.
me, I would believe
It can
it.
be much more efficient, and it can be actually done and approved with the student doing some work. And I know that that's the goal of the whole system. And this is not just for the high school thing, but for our own instructors, is pretty wonky. I'll call it this way. It's just not 2024. In a system that's supposed to manage records.
I will say.
If you can bring ISB systems to 2024, that'd be great.
Yeah, I've seen examples of that myself.
Good luck with that.
But we hear you, and those are things we need to work on together. But I
Being
think
recorded.
beyond, one of the goals today was to open up kind of an avenue or comfort of making sure, you know, if you have something like that, that you bring forward. And we bring it to the folks that, and this is not a new issue. Megan can tell you that for me, I have really worked hard to figure out a way to provide something to the classroom teacher that is taking on the additional responsibility. And here's somebody on the other side of that argument, depending on where they're coming from, is that, you know, why are they being paid twice to teach the same class? They're teaching the same students at the same school, being paid by the school, why do they need a second pay? And so that's the other side that someone will come up with. And the answer is somewhere, we're saying support that, right? It's not that you have to pay them twice, it's that you have to work together, and it gets back to that other word, partnership, right? Cooperation, figure out how you can do that together. I'm thrilled to hear about the funding
Committee, yeah.
committee. I really am, because that's how all of this starts. Evidence-based funding model started
Yep.
with a small committee of people talking about how to fund. Last year, we put a new CPE formula on at the state level. A small group of people talking about how, both in fairness, equity, and just basic resource support, what should we be doing, right? Those are the things we need to work on. So I'm really happy to hear about that. And hopefully we'll be able to make other progress legislatively to take care of some of the issues that especially face us in rural part of the state.
Mhm.
I mean, it's difficult. It's really, really difficult. And I'm especially grateful to some of the schools in here who stuck their neck out and did some pilot with us on the synchronous learning. And Grayville comes to mind. And I don't want to pick on Grayville, but Grayville for Spanish, I believe it was online. Was that a Stone style Spanish? It was not. So we went from that, and that was another question that was going to be asked. We went from that to dual credit. So students at Grayville High School in the fall semester were not receiving instruction that was even credited and then in the spring we had dual credit Spanish. So the
Pretty
question
quick.
that came up back here that I now remember
Muy rápido.
had to do with the effect you think the foreign language, the new foreign language requirement is going to have on
Yep.
all of this.
28, 29.
Yeah, so, well, I've spent a lot of time the last few years working very closely in the CTE space. And there's a lot of CTE leaders who are like, kill that world language requirement. And I say, no, if I'm a legislator, you have to look at this from their perspective. Both renewed efforts on CTE, an extra $10 million this year, which is still $30 million less than like 1990 levels or whatever, but like, okay. And world language, these are all things kids need to compete for their futures. Like it is the same, it is career readiness. It is, and so don't go barking up that tree of killing it. And I said, again, I think there's other questions we could be asking from the grandiose. How can we re-envision what our school day, school year looks like? Now again, that would be easier to do if you're 110% of adequacy and not 70% of adequacy. Like, I know that. And this is a room full of people who are not at 110% of adequacy. So, like, I understand. I'm not saying, oh, yeah, just change your school day. That'll go great. It won't right now without some additional resources. The other part of that, though, is, like, again, there's legislative means here. And I've increasingly grown more confident in saying this. We keep packing more graduation requirements into the same carcass. Like, the 4-year English requirements gotta go.
Jason, I am fighting the good fight.
Gotta go. And well,
Fight
and
the
I've
good
got
fight.
English department chairs in bigger high schools that they themselves are saying, yeah, we could do a better job providing instruction. And again, I'm not looking to kill teacher jobs either, even in an area where we don't have a shortage, English-speaking high school English teachers. But like, there's other things we could be doing. We could retrain some of those people to be reading specialists and really push in to help adolescent reading instruction in the content area. Teach teachers, like, there are solutions to these things that will cost some money, but not an exorbitant amount of money, and allow us to still work within the school day we have until we get to the point. And again, thank you seriously to everybody who worked on EBF. Amazing work. We are in better shape than we've ever been. But, like, we live in a state, I talked how dreamy we are in Illinois right now. This is the opposite. Where 90% of adequacy is adequate, like, come on. That's not adequate, right? And we understand why that compromise has to happen, because there's only so much money, and we have to pay for roads and bridges. And so, so those are my thoughts on that. I just rambled. I'm so sorry about that.
I don't want to. It's been a great discussion.